One of the really cool things about being a collector is going back and reliving some of these really cool moments and some of these really cool collector editions that I have. And as I'm starting to make room in my collection for PlayStation 5 games, I am starting to move around some of my older titles, and I came across this and I totally forgot I had it. So I thought we'd go ahead and take a look at it. This is obviously Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion for the Xbox 360. This was the collector's edition that came out with the launch of the game. Now, collector editions back in the day were very different than they are today. They really didn't include much outside of making of features and usually one or two small items. You didn't really see a lot of statues and figurines until well into the end of the Xbox 360 stage, and then really picking up with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. So what I thought we would do today is take a quick look at what the collector edition actually looked like, and there we go. So a lot of these were really more of a tribute to the game's art and the design of the game than they were meant to some sort of physical token or some sort of physical thing that you displayed. You know, a lot of the videos I do on this channel are about unboxing collector editions and looking at all of the figures and looking at all of the little tchotchkes, for lack of a better word, that complete the set, things that you're going to display on your wall and look at for years to come. Back then, back in the day, that wasn't really what they did. They really focused more on the art and the design of the game as well. So you did sometimes get small little things like the coin that fell out, but typically you really were kind of limited to just, you know, the actual game and then maybe one or two small things. So I thought we'd go ahead and take a look at this. So this was one of the actual things that came with the collector edition. You could see there, it's got a really cool like emblem there, like kind of put into this. It's supposed to be leather, I don't think it is. But this is actually called The Pocket Guide to the Empire. And if you kind of flip through it and look, it actually is a book that would be written that somebody back in the day would have read. And it's basically a history book from the characters talking about the history of the area, and it includes maps and the walkthrough of some of the constellations and things like that. And it's actually a book that you would read. It meant really to be for somebody living in that time. This wasn't something that they created later on for people to read in terms of like, hey, this was our idea behind making the game. This was meant as like, if you lived during this period and you were a scholar of the world and you wanted to understand kind of what everything was like, this is how this was written. Very, very interesting. They kind of got away from this. You typically don't see this kind of almost real game lore anymore. But if you read through it all, and I don't think I ever will, but just skimming through it, that's exactly what it is, talking about the races of people and how they all migrated to Tamriel and kind of, you know, their thoughts and everything. And this is actually a really, really cool idea. You know, we don't really see this much anymore in regular collector editions. You also obviously got the game. Now, the game didn't include any kind of crazy DLC or anything back then. DLC wasn't really a thing, and even though it does prominently display Xbox Live on the top of the game disc, there wasn't really a lot in the way of online features. The only thing you had was a very generic, very, very basic cloud save, but the idea of tons of DLC and cosmetics really wasn't the core intent of this game. When this game shipped, as many other games, it was really meant to kind of be a standalone experience. Matter of fact, there weren't really a lot of patches, and people still weren't really using fast Ethernet for those kind of connections. You had limited connections if you needed it, but typically it wasn't meant for that. So the big thing that really a lot of people bought it for, and I absolutely watched that, was this DVD here. Now, this was long after the Xbox had kind of lost the war of the Blu-ray and the HD DVD and all that, kind of how that played out. This was just a standard DVD, and it includes basically a long series of documentaries with bonus material, including the making of the game, and it's got interviews with all of the famous players and their thoughts on the world design and their creative visions and everything, and that is really, really cool. That has largely been replaced today by a lot of documentaries you see on YouTube or developer blogs that have become much more prominent as we've entered a much more streaming age where it's easy to upload something on YouTube. But keep in mind, back when this game came out, you know, YouTube was still in its infancy. Online streaming was still very difficult to do, and a lot of us still had dial-up. So this was really the only way to get a conduit into the developers' minds and thoughts, and I think that's really kind of cool. It also comes with, it's still in the original wrapping, an actual little coin. Now, a lot of these collector editions did include some sort of small little piece. This is obviously the currency of the world there, and you could see some of the markings and stuff on the back there, which is cool. I used to display coins prominently. Obviously not this one because it's still in the wrapping, but they're so flat and you really need like a nice big coin stand to hold them up. And a lot of games just don't do coins anymore, so this is kind of largely went away, but it's kind of neat to see that. And then you have two other things, one of which is actually, believe it or not, an instruction manual. I know that seems kind of odd and probably a collector edition in of itself, but pretty hardy instruction manual. This was not exclusive, obviously, to the game, or the collector edition rather. This wasn't any copy of the game you got, but this is 47 pages of walking through how the inventory menu works and how, you know, magic works and just everything. It talks about different skills you can unlock, the pros and the cons of all the various races with the stat attributes when you make your character at the beginning, different kinds of magic, different kinds of celestial signs that you can get that kind of help you along the way, how to fight in combat, what to look for in combat, how to attack, not just basic moves, but strategies as well, and all the different crafting and alchemy and stealth and everything. This was a very robust game when this game came out. This was actually very well used for me. I was really happy to have that because, you know, really jumping into this game, there's so much in the world of Elder Scrolls, so that really did come in handy. And then lastly, a lot of these collector editions included some sort of a physical map, which included, you know, kind of a rough overlay of what to expect. And I guess the idea here, this is a pretty big map. I'll try to open it up and get as much as I can on the camera here for you guys. I guess the idea here was and the intent was you were going to actually, you know, hang this on your wall and look at it, and to kind of like see what, you know, what was the world, you know. Now, it doesn't include a lot of little details in terms of, this would be incredibly hard to actually play this game and navigate. If you look at it, and I know there's a slight reflection because of the camera, or the light rather, but, you know, there's not really a lot of details. Like you can see there's a river here, but it doesn't show each little individual settlement. Quests were designed in this game by this point where they were quest markers to kind of give you a rough idea where to go. But this would have been incredibly handy in older games, particularly in Morrowind, where in Morrowind, you didn't have quest markers. They would say, hey, go to this town and talk to a guy wearing a red shirt. And a map like this would have come incredibly handy because you didn't know where that town was. It was the fog of war everywhere, and you would have to, you know, actually walk around to kind of uncover everything. So this is really just more of kind of like a collector's piece in the sense that, like, if you really wanted to hang it up maybe while you were playing, or just to kind of give you a general gist of where things were, you could. But honestly, this wasn't used this much by this time. But something like this would have been incredibly handy, though, like I mentioned in Morrowind, where that game was incredibly complex. So all in all, this I think was a pretty nice collector edition for the time. You know, you got a nice case, you got a coin, you got this really cool guide that was really, really designed to give you a real sense of the role-playing element. It really puts you in the shoes of somebody living in this world. You got the bonus material making of DVD and the map. So just thought it was kind of neat, a little piece of history I thought I'd pull out for you. As I mentioned, this is a very old game, you know, running on many, many years, you know, a little over a decade and a half at this point. So this is what collector editions looked like back then. But I thought it'd be fun to throw this video out there because, you know, we're good to remember our roots. And let's face it, Oblivion was one of the best games I've ever played. With that, I'm going to close out this video. Hope you guys found this trip down memory lane informative. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.